Good morning, everybody. I hope you're doing well. I myself am doing quite well. Yesterday was extraordinary. We were watching the Alec Baldwin trial, and the jurors had been dismissed all the way to Monday. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to show the criminal technician that prompted this. And as we were discussing her testimony from the day before, the court came back live and and basically the whole courtroom went into full-blown meltdown. It was actually quite extraordinary to watch. Um, so I thought that because even under the video where we actually watched the live thing happen, people were leaving comments, and I thought they don't quite understand what happened in the case. So it's kind of interesting because, and I watched LawTube last night, and so many of those attorneys were just in awe that they had never seen anything like that ever in 20 years, 25 years of practice, had never seen a moment like that in court. And so I said, well, if they have never seen it, then certainly we lay people that don't, that we're not professional lawyers and whatnot, then of course we would have some trouble with it, correct? So I think to start today, I think it's most important to point this out because this is a big deal. This case with Alec Baldwin ended up dismissed with prejudice. And to make a long story short, what that means is that this prosecutor's office or any other prosecutor, they are barred now from bringing another lawsuit with the same claims. This judgment that we saw the judge give yesterday, this was her final judgment. The case can't be reopened. It cannot be refiled. It is done, finished, over with. So, so the question becomes, is Alec Baldwin like the luckiest person alive on the planet? Oh, I don't know. I mean, you can say what you want to about him. I do think that I don't think they overcharged the case, right? I think the charges were accurate. It wasn't a murder case. They were not saying that he had malice as he pulled the trigger. The charges were reflecting general overall bad judgment, basically, right? That he went against protocol. The judge had already saved him in terms of being held responsible as the production company, which sort of surprised me because I thought that was going to be I thought that would be the actual biggest hurdle that he would have, but she dismissed that, and it was brought personally against him acting as an individual. And so it was just saying there was an accident. And I think some people don't realize that Alec Baldwin and his wife, they actually were really, really good friends with Helena Hutchins and her family. They were friends before this movie. They had dinner together. They spent weekends, vacation together. They were close. So it even defies even all the more the idea that he murdered her, that this was a murder investigation. It was actually a case brought for basically acting in a reckless way that caused the death of another person. So what happened in the dismissal? So the judge dismissed the case with prejudice, meaning that the evidence can't be brought. He's off the hook. He's done. Nobody can come later to get him. And the question is, what happened that led to this event. And I'm going to show, I'm going to go back and rewatch the courtroom moment. But it was a strange set of circumstances. To make a long story short, this prosecutor, Morrise, she withheld evidence, and to make it all the more egregious, she and the corporal who was the lead investigator on this case, they had a meeting when this evidence was brought forward by a citizen, a concerned citizen. When the evidence was brought forward, this police officer, lead investigator, spoke with the prosecution team, and together they made the decision to basically bury the new evidence. That's right. They hid the new evidence. Now, you're going to see her get up on the stand and say she didn't do anything wrong, that she didn't know, but bull. Not, that is just not real. And Law and Lumber, Runkle of the Bailey, they did a live last night, and I felt like Law and Lumber, he has a great deal of respect for Morrissey. He did not believe that she knew that they had buried the evidence. He didn't think that she knew that there was a different case number assigned to the new evidence, correct? I disagree. I got to disagree. I think this was a case of, your professional hero doing something boneheaded, unethical, foolish, and you just try to make excuses for them. Even as a lay person, you can watch her on this stand. You can listen to her words, and she sounds much more aligned with being a kid who just got their hand caught in a candy jar than a seasoned prosecutor, a professional who is explaining her course of decision making. You will see her. I think this is a classic case of letting your, excuse my language, ass overload your mouth, or I'm sorry, your mouth overload your ass. I think she just couldn't believe what was happening. And as it unfolded in this very dramatic Hollywood-esque moment, I think she thought, I can save this. I think somehow she thought, I've just got to convince the judge that I did the right thing. And she completely lost sight of she completely lost sight of the fact that she violated primary ethics. Most of us that cover the true crime stories, live trials and such, we know what Brady is. We know what a Brady violation is. We understand that the prosecution 100% has an obligation to turn over all evidence collected. It is not within their job description at all to make a decision whether or not the defense wants to use this new evidence. That is not her job. The prosecution's job is to turn over every piece of evidence, not pieces of evidence that they think, oh, I wonder if the defense would like this piece of evidence. Nope, we'll just keep this right here. They cannot do that. They must turn over every single thing that they find or that is presented to them in the context of this terrible, tragic day in October of 2021. They must. And it's just like she lost sight of of what she was doing, because she knows that. She doesn't have any doubt about that. Maybe she's very prideful. Maybe she's arrogant. Maybe this is not the first case that she played loose with evidence. I mean, look at the prosecution in the Idaho 4 case. I think they're playing fast and loose with evidence, and this is going to be a big, huge lesson for that police department and that prosecutor. They better be paying attention to what went on down in Arizona yesterday, because they could get that case against Koberger thrown out on its ass, just like this one with Alec Baldwin. It was crazy, and we're going to watch it. So in all, the case was dismissed by the judge. It was an involuntary manslaughter case. It was dismissed by the judge yesterday based on finding that the police had engaged in misconduct, that the prosecutors had withheld evidence. It's that dramatic. And of course, it just sort of took everybody surprised, because they just couldn't believe their ears. It happened so quickly. The judge, you could watch the change in her body language. You could see when the realization came to her what they had actually done. You could see this deep reaction within her. She knew exactly what was going to happen. The Judge Summer said the late discovery of the evidence during this trial has impeded the effective use of that evidence in such a way that it has impacted the fundamental fairness of the proceedings. If this conduct does not rise to the level of bad faith, it certainly comes so near to bad faith to show signs of scorching. Oh, it was bad faith. I believe, just like this judge, I believe this prosecutor and investigator knew that they were covering up this evidence. They did. Now, the evidence came out at the end of Hannah Gutierrez Reed's trials, when it first reared its ugly head, right? That would have thrown that trial into complete disarray. And what would have been the impact on the prosecution of Alec Baldwin? That was the big question. I felt like watching this yesterday, I felt like it was such a foolish thing from a legal perspective. It was such a foolish thing to have done, because all it would have done was prolonged the prosecution of Alec Baldwin in no way that I can see. And perhaps I'm completely wrong. It doesn't look like it would have had any effect on the prosecution of Alec Baldwin, because Alec Baldwin is accused of pulling the trigger in a reckless manner, pointing the gun at another person when everybody knows. We even teach little kids in kindergarten not to point their finger like it's a gun or a stick and pretend like you're shooting a person. And he did just that. Not only did he point the gun, but he claims he didn't pull the trigger, but they did plenty of tests. It didn't misfire. It had to have been pulled. So they still would have gotten the manslaughter verdict. They still would have gotten it. It just would have been delayed. So I don't know if it was arrogance on the part of this prosecutor. I don't know. It's hard to believe that it would be some kind of cover up for someone else doing foul play. But you're going to see when we watch the clip, you're going to see that it does seem like the live round that was presented as new evidence looks like the dummy rounds. It does not look like any of the other live rounds that were found on set, but it does look exactly like the dummy rounds that Hannah Gutierrez Reed had. And we cannot forget, we must not forget Sarah Zachary, who had it out for Hannah Gutierrez Reed. She hated Hannah Gutierrez Reed. They were locked in battle on the set. When this shooting occurred, she got a handful of weapons, of ammunition and casings, and threw them away, destroyed evidence. And I felt at the time when the trial for Hannah came up, I felt at the time that Zachary, her behavior was so suspicious and out of line. I wondered at the time myself, did this girl try to set up Hannah, get her in trouble, get her fired off the set by having an accidental discharge of a live round? Was she and her friend trying to get Hannah Gutierrez Reed fired? I had that thought. And yesterday, and you're going to see it, yesterday, when they showed the bullets, what they looked like, the reaction of the judge, I said, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Maybe, in fact, it was foul play. Maybe there was sabotage on the set. And about the only thing that we knew of from the Hannah Gutierrez Reed trial is sabotage could have been likely given the fight that was happening between Sarah Zachary and Hannah Gutierrez Reed. It's so crazy. It's so crazy. Crazy. All right. Yeah, the trial wasn't about the ammunition, right, Jackie? Trial didn't have anything to do with the ammunition other than there was live rounds on the set, and it shouldn't have been, but that's not what was charged. Which is why it's so horrible. It's so horrible what this investigator and prosecutor did. It was so foolish. And I said this at the end of the live stream yesterday, and I'll say it again for those of you who are professionals out there. Your professional ethics code is there for a reason. Use it like a Bible. Follow it to the letter of the law. Your state laws governing your license are there to protect you. They're there to protect the public as well. But you follow them no matter what. Because had they done that, had this prosecutor and this investigator, if they had followed the ethics code for evidence and the prosecutor had followed her ethics and legal obligations, Alec Baldwin would be found guilty of manslaughter. But when you got your prosecutor and your lead investigator covering up potential evidence, this judge had no choice. And you will see the look on her face. She is furious to have been put in this situation. Furious. It is heartbreaking for the Hutchins family. It is, and that is something that Alec Baldwin and the Hutchins family, they have to work out together at this point. Remember, the Hutchins family can still bring civil suit against him, against Hannah Gutierrez Reed, all of that against the production company. But to make long story short, legally, in terms of threat of incarceration, he's off the hook. He's done. There's nothing that can be done about this. It's finished. All right. All right, so let's watch as this unfolds, because it's really quite shocking how the reason I wanted to replay this today is to look at the psychological demeanor, how the bodies are changing and adapting as everybody goes into fight or flight mode.
All right, Ms. Morrissey voluntarily calling herself as a witness without any requirement by the court to do so, or Mr. Spiro asking her to. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear?
Okay, now you have to understand that immediately before this moment, you remember the lady who did opening statements? Right before this all unfolded, she quit. She resigned. And the reason that she resigned is because she learned about this ammunition. So the rest of the prosecution team never knew about these new bullets that were brought in. They were live. The new ammunition that was brought in that looked exactly like the blanks. Exactly. When she found out that they had given those bullets, that piece of evidence, they gave that a different case number, meaning it had nothing to do with the Alec Baldwin prosecution. It had nothing to do with the prosecution of Hannah Gutierrez Reed. It was like a completely different case. They knew. Don't let this seasoned prosecutor and investigator make you think that this was all just an innocent mistake. Hell no. Don't buy that for a minute. Not 1 minute. So the prosecutor did opening statements. She quit. She said, what the hell? I don't want any part of what you guys have done or are about to do. Color me gone. And she left before this all happened. The judge, the other prosecutor, the defense witness, attorney, Alec's attorney himself, they're all saying, no, Morrissey, you don't have to do this. No, we don't want you to do this. Don't do this. Do not destroy your career. This is being televised. What are you doing? Because the reality, and this brings to mind when you are in a state of panic, when fight or flight has kicked in, when anxiety is high, do not make any decisions, big or small. Don't do it. Don't, because whatever's playing out in your mind, that is not what reality is going to look like. You are dealing with a different mindset. You are in a survival type situation, and all you can think is, if you are fight or flight, all you can think is to fight. If you're a flight person, you don't have anything to worry about because you're going to retreat and run naturally. But if you're a fighter, like I am, my body just shoots forward before I even know what's happening. And I think that's what happened with this lady. I think she realized where she was at. The minute the judge said to the investigator, who else knew that this evidence came in and you gave it a different case number? And the lead investigator named Morrissey, right? And that was the end. That was done, right? That was finished. So they come back and she's like, well, I'm going to call myself as witness. I'm going to call myself. The other prosecutor refused to call her, would not call her as a witness. She said, I'm going to call myself as a witness. And then Alec Baldwin's attorney, defense attorney, he stood up and said, Judge, I don't need to do this. She doesn't need to get up on the stand. The other prosecutor said, I can rest my case right now. The other prosecutor wanted to rest the case. In that point, then Alec Baldwin's attorney would have stood up and said that he moves for a dismissal, and the judge would have given the dismissal based on what the lead investigator had just said. But not this chick. She's in fight or flight, and by God, everything in her set, every cell in her body is screaming, you better fight, because there's a saber-toothed tiger coming for you, girl. Your entire career is on the line. You better fight your ass off. And that's what you're watching right here. You are watching a woman in meltdown.
Clear, affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Go ahead.
During my investigation of this case and my review of the evidence in this case.
Now, I want to say this, and I'm not going to interrupt again. I believe that this initial story that she is now reciting to you from memory, that's my opinion. I believe this was already written. I think she had already developed this narrative when she made the decision to bury this evidence. I think she said to herself, we've just done something that can end careers. I better be damn sure I got a story to cover my ass if this ever comes to light. And I think that's what we're seeing here. Watch how she starts this. It's fascinating. There's not a moment of hesitation. This thing with the lead investigator has just occurred. There's no way she had time to write this out and memorize it right before. I think she committed this little speech to memory months ago. All right, I'm going to be quiet now.
Of law that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, Fonnie Willis, DB.
During my investigation of this case and my review of the evidence in this case, I came to understand that there was a large batch of live ammunition that was in the possession of Thel Reed, Hannah Gutierrez's father. I also understood from all of the evidence and testimony that a portion of that batch of ammunition that belonged to Thel Reed was taken by Thel Reed and Seth Kinney to the 1883 cowboy training camp. When that was over, leftover ammunition was taken back to PDQ props. Seth Kinney took some of the ammunition from that container that he had brought back from Texas and turned it into the sheriff's department. And it appeared to me that he did it to try to exonerate himself. They took it from Mr.
Now, that's fascinating. She's just accused a man of being implicated in this shooting, this on-set shooting, right? She didn't bring charges against Seth Kinney. He hasn't been charged. Thel Reed was not charged. Thel Reed is Hannah Gutierrez Reed's dad, who was he was like the greatest of all time armorer in Hollywood, okay? He wants to pass the torch to his daughter. And so that's why Alec Baldwin had worked with Thel Reed a lot through the years. And so when Baldwin had this movie that he was doing, and he is the production company. When he had this movie he was doing, budget was very small. It was a limited budget. And they made an agreement that Hannah would be the armorer. Now, Hannah didn't come on that set cold. It wasn't like she had never worked before. This was the first time that she would be fully in charge as armorer. But she grew up on the sets with her dad. She had been a part of this business for years and years and years and years. So why is it that her dad, it's the end of her trial, they bring up this gun, this ammunition, and Seth Kenney gets involved? This is about Hannah Gutierrez Reed, in my opinion. So now, why is this woman on the stand in full meltdown, fight or flight, and she's now trying to implicate Seth Kenney into something? They were finished with Hannah Gutierrez Reed's case. It was the end of the trial. So why is she proclaiming, oh, Seth Kenney did it, trying to exonerate himself? Again, don't ever make decisions when you are in fight or flight, ever.
Kenney, and they tagged it into evidence under the Rust case. Law enforcement then executed a search warrant at PDQ Props, and they took the entire container. And I will say that I do agree, as I recall, although I don't have it in front of me, I do agree that the search warrant didn't really require law enforcement to take everything, but it was my understanding that Mr. Kenney gave them everything so that they would have it and could tag it into evidence. Portions of that ammunition were then sent to the FBI for testing so that they could be compared to the live rounds that were found on the set of Rust.
Okay, here's another very, very, very important distinction, which I believe she's using to mislead people and maybe to try and mislead the judge, though the judge is too smart for that. Okay. You've got to be on the lookout for when she says live rounds. That's all that Summer wanted to talk about was live rounds, live rounds, live rounds. Comparing these new bullets to live rounds on the Rust set. Here's why it's a huge problem. You're going to hear the judge proclaim with shock and awe. She demands for the attorneys to come up to her bench and look at these photographs. The new evidence, the new bullets that were brought in are an exact match for the dummy rounds, not for the live rounds on the Rust set, but for the dummy rounds that were on the Rust set, which increases the specter that there was a bad actor, that there was sabotage, that someone intentionally tried to make an accident happen on the set of Rust. Now, I don't think not for a minute that anyone wanted Helena Hutchins shot. Not for a minute. After going through the Hannah Gutierrez Reed trial, my thoughts are that there was a rivalry between Hannah, who was very young, Hannah and the assistant. I think she was like a wasn't she a props lady? Wasn't she like assistant props lady? Anyway, she was supposed to be. Sarah Zachary was under Hannah Gutierrez Reed, and she hated Hannah. And she did, of all the people that were on that set, Sarah Zachary was the shadiest. Would y'all disagree with me on that? Do y'all think that Sarah Zachary, her actions were really, really shady? Or am I somehow seeing this wrong? I thought she did some crazy stuff. Really, really, really nutty. So anyway, to me, it seems like they were just trying to set up like an accident that would make Hannah look so bad that she would get fired. Yeah, she threw away evidence after the fact. she emptied out the gun of the other actor and threw the evidence away, which is fascinating. Almost like it was supposed to be his gun that had it. Really crazy. So the point here that I wanted to make is you're going to notice her saying live rounds, live rounds, live rounds. That wasn't the point. The point is these live rounds were a dead ringer for what were the blanks, which increases the likelihood that there was sabotage.
To the FBI for testing so that they could be compared to the live rounds that were found on the set of Rust. The FBI testing demonstrated that the live rounds that were taken from PDQ props that were originally in Texas did not match the live rounds on the set of Rust.
But what about the dummy round?
And that's testimony that we heard during the Gutierrez trial. So what ended up happening was Mr. Bowles, Ms. Gutierrez's lawyer, put Mr. Teskey on a witness list and was intending to call him as a witness to the Gutierrez trial. I conducted a pretrial interview of Mr. Teskey, and I want to back up. I did at this point have some understanding that Mr. Teskey had had contact with law enforcement regarding these rounds that he still had in Arizona. So these are rounds that never left Arizona. They were always in the possession of Thel Reed and Troy Teskey. They never went to Texas. They never came to New Mexico. That's what all of the evidence indicated. So I understood that Detective Hancock had communication with Mr. Teskey about trying to get those rounds, and Detective Hancock was unable to get those rounds from Mr. Teskey. I did not find that particularly concerning because those rounds had never left Arizona. The filming of Rust was in the state of New Mexico.
That wasn't your call to make, ma'am. That's just, at this point, that's just hearsay. That's not your call to make. And if there was an investigation to that point, if there is work product showing that there was an investigation, then the defense team is entitled to all of that information so they can conduct their own investigation. When pieces of evidence, pieces of police work product, when they are just poofing into thin air, you got a problem. And this is important related to the Brian Kohberger prosecution, because the last hearing they had, the lead investigator got up on the stand, and guess what? They too have police work product that just poofed into thin air. It's just gone. That Kohberger prosecution is in jeopardy for the same nonsense that we're watching right here.
And the rounds that were taken from PDQ went from Arizona to Texas to Albuquerque. So ammunition that is in the state of Arizona that has never left Arizona did not strike me that it had significant evidentiary value. Then, and I will say, I believe I actually saw a photo of it. At that point in time, I was able to look at the ammunition myself, and it was visibly dissimilar than the rounds from the set of Rust. We then cut to November of 2023. Mr. Bowles has put Mr. Teskey on a witness list for the Hannah Gutierrez case. We conducted a pretrial interview with Mr. Teskey on November 2nd of 2023. At that point in time, he brought up that he was still in possession of these live rounds that were Thel Reed's live rounds that had never left the state of Arizona. I then, when he started, I think he indicated during the pretrial interview that they were from the same batch that was sourced from Joe Swanson. And I then said, we should get those from you. I had a conversation with Detective Hancock after that pretrial interview about how we could get the rounds from Mr. Teskey, and we were trying to figure out if we could send a local law enforcement agency to pick them up. I was then decided that I needed to figure out if that was necessary, since they had never left Arizona. And up to that point, it was my impression that they did not match the live rounds from the set of Rust.
Not your call to make, lady.
I then, as I recall, reached out to Mr. Bowles. He and I had a conversation about whether or not the rounds should be tested by the FBI.
Totally
And I was
agree,
still trying
Katie.
to figure out if I
Totally
could get the
agree.
rounds from Arizona to New Mexico. So I asked Mr. Bowles to please send me a photograph.
So, Katie, it would seem that there was conversation that this would put off prosecution of Alec Baldwin's case if they handled this new potential evidence in the proper way, in the ethical, legal manner that they should have, that it would have put off Alec Baldwin's case, though I don't think it would have affected the successful prosecution. I think he still would have been found guilty because the charge was manslaughter. The charge wasn't who was responsible for bringing the live rounds. You have the assumption, if you charge someone with involuntary manslaughter, you're operating under the assumption that the live rounds were there no matter how they got there. It didn't matter how they got there. It didn't matter if they came in on a piece of leather, like in a belt loop. It doesn't matter if they came in a box that was registered and accounted for, or if it came in somebody's pocket hidden. They weren't making that point was not under discussion. They had the assumption the live round was on set, period. Where things went wrong is that, Alec Baldwin didn't properly check the gun, number one. He was reckless with the gun by having his finger on the trigger, number two. And he pointed a gun in the exact direction of a living human being. Those were the foundations of the case. Not, but who brought it? That was never an issue. It was an issue for law enforcement because they had to make a distinction for this prosecutor. They had to make a distinction between, was this sabotage? Is there a bad actor out there with nefarious purposes? Was the live round brought in on purpose to cause a disaster, or was it, for all intent purposes, an innocent mistake on someone's part that the live rounds were there and then Alec was not safe, right? He didn't handle his responsibility safely. So I agree. This is just terrible that they made this decision. It was not needed. Now, it would have definitely thrown the prosecution of Hannah Gutierrez Reed. It would have definitely thrown that into disarray. The evidence came forward toward the end of the trial. It was that would have been the big blow up at that time. So I think when they buried it, when they put it under a different case number, they refused to take a real statement, and then there was no follow-up, no work product that proves it was ever investigated, anything like that. So all this bullshit that she's saying, all of this big talking that she's doing about the bullets never left here and they never left there and they were in Texas and New Mexico, never, or in Arizona, never New Mexico. All of that, she has not got a single work product from her investigators showing what she's saying. And yet she's trying to appeal to the judge to say the reason that I gave this a different, or the reason that I didn't use this or turn it over to the defense is because it was a moot point. I determined that it was not a part of the Rust case. What? You are not God. So you got to watch her because she uses word games. She will use the term live round, completely ignoring blanks. She will talk about Thel Reed, but then it's Hannah Gutierrez. She doesn't want there to be this connection. Oh, that's her dad. So if Thel Reed was the one that provided the ammunition, then why wouldn't Hannah have access to it to bring it on the set? So what she's trying to do is say there was no connection at all between those bullets in this case, when actually there were a number of connections between those bullets and this case. A number, several avenues.
Of the rounds from Troy Teskey so that I could see with my eyes whether they were even remotely similar. If they were similar, I could go through the steps of obtaining the ammunition, connecting probably with local law enforcement.
They were similar. In fact, you're about to hear the judge say they're a match for the dummy rounds, the blanks. Now, a dummy round and a blank are two different things, but they still look like bullets, right? So she keeps saying live rounds. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. They on that set, there were dummy rounds, there were blanks, and there were live rounds. So if any of the new evidence coming forward looks like any of those three, it's a part of it.
But having a local law enforcement agency go to Mr. Teskey's residence and collect them. I didn't want to do that if they didn't look anything like the rounds from the set of Rust, because all 6 rounds from the set of Rust are identical.
The defense did not know about the new evidence that was brought in that was filed under a different case number, CJK. They did not know until yesterday when the lead investigator got up on the stand and said it, and everybody's jaw hit the ground. That's when they then went back behind the scenes. They got rid of the jury. They turned the cameras off, tried to find out what the hell was going on. And then it all came out. And listen, CJK, there were prosecutors quitting yesterday when they found out about this new evidence that was basically buried. So that's how they knew, CJK.
To each other. So when I had this conversation with Mr. Bowles, he provided me the photograph that I showed this morning. And this is it was my understanding that this was a photograph from Troy Teskey. So Troy and I don't communicate. He's a defense witness. I can't communicate with a defense witness. So Mr. Bowles, as I recall, texted me this photo, and this is a photo that Mr. Teskey took at my request so that I could determine whether this ammunition was related in any way to the set of Rust, because it never left the state of Arizona. So if it never left the state of Arizona, the only way that it is relevant to the Rust investigation is if it has any similarity to the live rounds that were found on the set of Rust, because we were at that point trying to figure out the source of the live rounds. When I received this photograph from Mr. Bowles, I could immediately tell that these are very dissimilar from the live rounds that were found on the set of Rust. They have brass primers. So this is what was presented to the prosecution as the rounds that were in Mr. Teskey's possession. They have brass primers and not silver primers. One of them, the one on the left, appears to be a Starline brass casing, but they have truncated cone projectiles.
Well, regardless of what news you read, if you listen to the judge explain her position, she made an excellent case for why not only did she dismiss this case, she dismissed it with prejudice. This prosecutor is probably going to be disbarred.
We had seen ammunition that looked exactly like this, not exactly, but very, very similar. And that ammunition was the ammunition that was collected from the sheriff's department and went to the FBI for testing and was determined not to be similar in any way to the live rounds.
Live rounds, but they were a match
rest
for the dummy rounds. Or for the blank.
So when I saw this photograph, I could see that it was not at all similar to the live rounds on the set of Rust. And I decided not to take any steps to collect this ammunition because it was in Arizona, had never come to New Mexico, and didn't match the live rounds on the set of Rust.
CJK, the anger should be with this prosecutor and the lead detective, the lead investigator, not the judge. They did the worst. This is the worst that our legal system can do to a defendant.
So what ends up happening is Mr. Teskey is called to New Mexico by Mr. Bowles to testify at the Gutierrez trial. And you can hear on the video that the court heard Mr. Teskey say, the defense attorney, that's not me, asked him to bring samples of that ammunition. According to Mr. Teskey, he brought the samples of the ammunition, showed them to the defense attorney, and the defense attorney said, I don't want those. I'm not going to use those. And by the way, I'm not going to call you as a witness. So Mr. Teskey sat in court during the trial. And then at some point, contacted the deputies downstairs and said, I have this ammunition. So he tried to give it to the defense attorney, who's the person who asked him to bring it. The defense attorney said no. And he then tried to get a hold of Detective Hancock, who was not available because she was with me. So then he ends up going to the sheriff's department and he leaves the ammunition at the sheriff's department. I was contacted, I don't think it was the same day, but I'm not 100% sure. It's possible that it was, by Detective Hancock, and she indicated that Troy Teskey had dropped off ammunition at the sheriff's department. Because I had already asked for a photograph of it, I believed that that ammunition was going to look like the photograph that Mr. Bowles had sent me. Corporal Hancock indicated that she was going to tag them into evidence and she was going to create what she called a doc report. And I said, great, do that.
So she's throwing the lead investigator under the bus.
I was not aware at that point in time that a doc report would not have the same case number as Rust. I was not aware at that point in time that it would not be linked to the Rust case number. I understood that he had dropped off ammunition.
Okay, I just want to ask all of you guys, okay, because most of the people in our channel, at some point in our lives, we were professionals. We were working out in the world with people, correct? Who here believes that the lead investigator is going to create a completely separate case and put evidence into a different case and didn't tell this very powerful woman? You believe that? I don't believe it. Not for a second. Not for a second. They knew what they were doing.
Ammunition that I believed to not look similar to the ammunition from the set of Rust. And I had no idea that it wasn't going to have the same case number. I want to show the court, though.
Oh, sure you did.
When Mr. Teskey
Not
showed up
for a
to
minute,
testify
Scarlett.
with the ammunition that Mr. Bowles told him to bring to the state of New Mexico, he was not called as a witness, and Mr. Bowles said, "I'm not taking that ammunition from you."
Oh, we're back
That's
to
why.
pointing the finger at the defense.
Because these are photographs from Hannah Gutierrez's cell phone extraction, and they show spot-on match for the live rounds found on the set of Rust. This is clearly the reason that Mr. Bowles said, "You and your ammunition better get out of here," because it would not have hurt the case, the state's case against Hannah Gutierrez. It would have been the best evidence I could have hoped for. These look exactly like the ammunition, the actual ammunition that we have in evidence. And they do look like the 3 rounds that are in that envelope. So when Mr. Teskey couldn't get Mr. Bowles to take them because they were the best evidence against his client, he took them over to the sheriff's department. And when he dropped them at the sheriff's department, I was told that there was going to be a report. There was a report. I assumed they looked like these. And Detective Hancock indicated to me that because he dropped them off and he didn't wait for her, she was then going to try to follow up with him, take a statement from him, so that we could get some idea where they came from, what the relevance was, if there was any relevance at all. And he never returned her phone calls.
Oh, my God.
And that's all of the information that I can give the court, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Now, look at the sweat that's breaking out now. She's sweating now.
May I ask a few questions, Ryan? When you took over this case,
Okay, so this attorney right here, he has been bold and brash, big, his hands flailing about. He's an incredibly, in terms of his personality and demeanor, he's very powerful. He's very, very confident. He stands up straight, holds his chin up, right? He's just walked up here and grounded himself. He's been over a little bit. He's hanging on to the edges of the table, the podium. He recognizes he's in deep. He recognizes that he has an incredibly powerful prosecutor who is on the stand, that there has been a monumental disruption to this case, that he's fairly sure he's going to get a dismissal anyway. He told her he did not need her to be a witness. He tried to end it to spare her what's about to happen next. I don't know what he's thinking, but I know he's not confident. I don't know if he wants to hurt her or if he's trying to figure out, how do I do this without destroying her career? And I would say no one destroyed her career but her. She made the decision along with the lead investigator. Now they will have to answer for those legal problems. But you have a job to do. And that is right the wrong, put the ship back upright, and see where this goes, right? This is really a terrible thing that happened. You had a guy here who is fighting for his reputation and his freedom, although it wasn't long, it would have been an 18-month sentence. But his reputation would have been destroyed in terms of his ability to make money and whatnot. You can't compare that to the loss of life of Helena Hudgens or the director who was also shot. You've got attorneys whose careers are on the line now. You've got an investigator who's likely will be fired. This was terrible what they did. And in this nonsense, in my opinion, nonsense, that they're thinking about, well, how can we file new charges and get him anyway? No, our legal system doesn't work like that. We're protected from double jeopardy. We're protected from personal vendettas by the court. Alec Baldwin's a free guy. Now, maybe they decide to bring, well, Sarah Zachary is protected from having any further prosecution because she did a plea deal. Seth Kenney, maybe he's still open to some sort of prosecution about whether or not he's the one that supplied the live rounds. I think this is dead in the water. I don't think they have anywhere to go now. And it's incredible. It's incredible that this happened. It's incredible for Helena Hudgens' family, for the director's family. It's incredible. It's incredible.
The investigator handling the case, Mr. Schilling, left the case, correct?
At my request, yes.
The paralegal that was handling this case with you left the case, Mr. Tad.
At my request, yes.
Well, the first prosecutor that was working with you on this case, you selected, correct?
I did.
And he resigned too?
I wouldn't say that he resigned, no.
But what would you call it?
He didn't stay on the case for the Alec Baldwin trial, correct?
No, and he indicated that that was because
Look
he
how she's
represented
sweating.
a labor union that's a national labor union, and he was not expecting the trial to be set so quickly. He wasn't expecting it to be set in July. So when he realized that the trial was going to be set in July, he was going to be in collective bargaining agreements for his national labor union, and he wasn't going to be able to have enough time.
Erlinda Johnson, the next prosecutor selected, resigned from the case today,
She did.
based in part on the conduct we're here discussing, correct?
I believe that Ms. Johnson Ms. Johnson didn't want my understanding is that she didn't agree with the decision to have a public hearing.
Okay, I think you'd be wrong about that, ma'am, because she actually did go on live TV last night for an interview, and she point blank said she quit the minute she found out that they hid the ammunition, that they gave the ammunition a new case number, even though that ammunition was presented to the police directly with the statement of, I think this has something to do with the Rust movie production shooting. And they took it and gave it a new number that had no connection at all to the Rust movie production setting. These people did not find this out till yesterday. And so when she found out, she told them right then, you did what? You hid what? And she quit. And when she was being interviewed last night, she was very clear about her ethical mandates. She talked about her morality. She talked about the fact that it's not her job to send Alec Baldwin or any other defendant to prison. Her job as prosecutor is to collect the evidence and present it to the jury And it is the job of the jury to have confidence in the evidence that's been provided to them. And they are the ones that make the decision about guilt or innocence, not her. She was very clear. She was very impressive. So this woman, we know, just lied. I mean, I think she lied throughout this whole thing. Don't get me wrong. But this is one situation. She lied without any forethought that the other prosecutor was willing to go public. Never, ever make decisions when you are in fight or flight. Never.
On July 1st in this matter, you served a certificate of compliance with 5501, correct?
I did.
And you've never turned over the report or any of the evidence that we're talking about here at this hearing, correct?
Let's take it one at a time. I did not turn over the report. I didn't have a copy of the report. The rounds that were left at the sheriff's department by Troy Teskey, I have absolutely no reason to believe that they are relevant to the incident that took place on the set of Rust. These are,
except that the guy that brought them to you, who had connections to Hannah Gutierrez Reed and her father, and Seth Kinney, that he said that they were connected to the Rust setting. People, we don't have judge, jury, and executioner all wrapped into one person in this country. And she put herself in that role. She hid that evidence. She knew damn well she was hiding it.
rounds that were in the possession of Belle Reed and never left the state of Arizona.
You also did not allow the defense to view that evidence at any point during our request to review evidence in this case.
I had never seen it, and I didn't realize that it wasn't under the same case number because I'm not a law enforcement officer and I don't work at the sheriff's department. But you are right.
Jesus.
And you concede that
What are you saying? You are a top prosecutor. What is coming out of your mouth? Your investigators work for you. They're not going to do anything unless you tell them to, and the entire world knows that. God.
they are Starline brass, silver 45, right?
I can. And this is the best evidence against Hannah Gutierrez.
Yeah, you've said that a couple of times. Any favorable evidence you understand as a prosecutor has to be turned over to the defense, correct?
I do.
Any evidence that could be used as a defense to potentially be favorable has to be turned over to the defense.
Absolutely.
So the third Hague report that never got turned over to the defense, you understand that that's Brady evidence?
I did, yes.
Okay.
Wow.
And you also failed to turn that over in this case as well, correct?
Look at her sweating. She jumped up there just like Fannie Willis, or Fonnie Willis, just like Fonnie Willis. She came in, her dress backwards, her hair on fire, breathing heavy. Oh, apropos that her American flag pin was upside down. Same thing in fight or flight. Fighting for her life because her lover Wade had just thrown her under the bus. She's in the same state. Never, 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 never make decisions when you are in, like, never. It's incredible. Now, this Hague report is another issue. This is a different issue that she buried, that she hid.
And let me give you a full answer to your question. When the second Hague report came in, and I provided all of this to the defense, I sent it to the person who is managing the discovery server and asked them to upload it. It wasn't until I realized during pretrial interviews that it wasn't there, that there was a problem with it. So I then attempted to figure out what the problem was, and it was indicated to me that it appeared that the former paralegal who was working for the special prosecutor, had removed it. So we then immediately provided it. Then during the pretrial interview of Mr. Haig, it was brought to my attention that the defense did not have the August 31st report that indicated that the gun functioned fine, perfectly fine. And that was provided immediately. I went back, I checked my email, I could see that I received it from Mr. Haig and failed to forward it on to be uploaded. And I provided it as soon as I was aware that you did not have it.
Okay, now I have a question for you guys. We're looking at multiple pieces of evidence so badly handled, all of it, all the mistakes, all of it handled by this prosecutor's office, all of it, right? All of it hurting the defendant or potentially hurting the defendant, right? Alec Baldwin is one of the Hollywood stars from even the golden era, right? As a young person, he's been a Hollywood icon for decades. How many cases right now today do you think attorneys are voraciously writing? They are ready to turn in. How many cases are going to go back with this Brady problem and end up get the convictions getting thrown out? How many? This is going to be crazy. Hannah Gutierrez Reed she's going to walk. That is a given. She's out of there. This is going to be done deal for her. But how many others that this woman right here was the prosecutor? And if these cases had the lead prosecutor, it's going to be crazy. This is like the dog ate my homework. Oh, the dog ate my homework. My mom put it down the garbage disposal. She won't own it at all. Scarlett and calming the chaos. This is the best lesson for anyone who has an anxiety problem or who encounters a tragedy. When you are in fight or flight, when you are anxious, do not take action. Do not make a decision. Do nothing except get yourself calm. The first line of attack is to get your body grounded and quiet. And for some people, that means going for a 3-mile run. And for other people, that means lifting weights. And for other people, it means playing an hour of Oculus, getting your mind off of it. But don't ever go into fight or flight and then come running in with your hair on fire, going to fix it all. Because we get now 2 examples. We've got Fonnie Willis from a few weeks ago. Now we got this one. Don't do it. She is in sympathetic shock. She's sweating, redness. She can hardly breathe. Her mouth the muscles around her mouth are so tight and contracted. You just know her jaw. Is just grinding her teeth. This woman needed about 5 bars. Okay. She is freaked out. This was the worst decision she could have ever made for her career. Here's what, if she had asked the judge, give me an afternoon, give me an hour, I just need time. If she had just had the forethought of, okay, I'm freaking out. This is not the time for me to act. I need a minute alone with myself. If she could have done that, she could have realized, I'm going to take the L. We're going to rest this case, and the defense attorney is going to move for a dismissal of charges, and this will be over. And I'll still have my career. She killed her career right here. Maybe maybe it would have been survivable. The evidence that got logged in under a different case number, reports that were not provided properly to the defense. She could have survived all of that. She's never going to survive getting up on the witness stand, lying her ass off, and then getting cornered by this top tier defense attorney. She'll never survive the spanking that this judge gives her. Never. She is very likely to be disbarred, y'all. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's a disaster all the way around. There were no winners here. None.
The fact that nobody at the Hannah Gutierrez retrial cross-examined Mr. Haig about the report didn't clue you into the fact that nobody had the report?
Actually, it didn't, and I'd like to address that. The reason that it didn't clue me in is because Hannah Gutierrez's defense.
Notice this. Watch her body language. He asked this question. Watch her body.
Nobody had the report?
Actually, it didn't, and I'd like to address that. The reason.
See her moving back away from the threat. See her move. See this question she did not anticipate. This question right here, she did not anticipate. This one's going to hurt. That what she's about to say, she's thinking of a lie right now. She's moving back away from him. He's coming for her. He is the wolf at the door.
And that it didn't clue me in is because Hannah Gutierrez's defense was that the gun worked perfectly. The defense in Hannah Gutierrez was never interested in any evidence that there was an issue with the gun, because if there was an issue with the gun, it damaged her case. So what you could see, if you watched the trial or saw any of the transcripts, the defense actually brought in their own expert to say that the gun worked perfectly. So they had no interest in that information.
And actually, you elicited testimony from Mr. Haig.
Oh my God, she's lying
at that trial that was inconsistent, at least partially inconsistent, as the court's aware, with his third report, correct?
Tell me what you're referring to, and I'll answer your question.
Well, there was a whole hearing about this where you saw this, and you saw me go back and forth with Mr. Haig for 25 minutes. So
I agree, but I need to know what you're talking about for me to answer your question.
Okay, if you can't answer the question, you can't answer the question.
Because she knows she's lying. Because she's trying to think on the fly. And now all of that internal activation is calming down now. And now she's realizing, what am I doing up on this stand? What has happened? What have I done? We've all been there. If you have an anxiety problem, if you have panic attack, you've all been there. You've had those moments where your body reacts before your brain gets engaged. And you're just like, shit, I'm in it now. What did I think? What was I doing? Why did I say that? Or why did I do that? It's coming home to roost now. It's coming for her.
Question, I'll move on.
One more thing I want to say too about this. Watch his demeanor here. I had gotten to a point where I didn't like this guy. I don't like people that are like tough acting, in your face, abrupt, rude. I don't like that. Makes me uncomfortable. I'm not a pacifist, but why make a bad situation worse by using a bunch of bravado? Why not just focus on what needs to be fixed and then fix it, right? This was so good. This was so telling to see his demeanor change so dramatically when he's faced with what really might be the most epic moment of his life, right? To be one of the only attorneys to ever have your prosecutor on the stand as a witness at the spur of the moment, a famous guy, his prosecution on the line. This is an epic moment for any attorney. And gone was the bravado, and gone was the showmanship, and he was so controlled and so measured and so focused. I really developed a different thought of him. And I thought to myself, why aren't you like this all the time? That's what went through my mind. Why can't you be this attorney all the time? Because this looks good. If I was on a jury, this is the attorney that I would embrace, not the tough guy, Christopher Proudfoot wannabe.
And actually, you elicited testimony from Mr. Haig at that trial that was inconsistent, at least partially inconsistent, as the court's aware, with his third report, correct?
Tell me what you're referring to and I'll answer your question.
Well, there was a whole hearing about this where you saw this and you saw me go back and forth with Mr. Haig for 25 minutes. So
I agree, but I need to know what you're talking about for me to answer your question.
Okay. If you can't answer the question, you can't answer the question. I'll move on.
I'm happy to, but
you say that the extent of the communications you have about the doc report, as you relay it to the court, is that all you said in response was, great, do that. That's your testimony?
yeah, I assumed that it was going to be tied to the same case number. So I said, great, do it, file a report.
No follow-up questions?
No,
Oh my God.
because I had a picture of the ammunition that didn't match the ammunition from the set of rust.
No concerns in your mind when you got the case file and you turned it over to us that it wasn't included?
Absolutely not. There's a
my God.
terabyte of discovery. I didn't know whether this 2-page police report had been provided. And in addition to that, I had no reason to believe, and still have no reason to believe, that those rounds have anything to do with these cases.
As I asked you about Mr. Haig yesterday when Ms. Popple testified, you would agree with me that her testimony under oath was false.
What part of her testimony was false? And I'll answer.
That she said that these rounds don't look anything like the rounds on the set when you elicited that testimony.
I agree with you. And I didn't realize that there were rounds that looked like that.
It's okay. In any event, when the court, and you never tested those rounds either, correct?
Any of the rounds that came from Mr. Teskey? No, because they came in just a few months ago.
And the court asked you actually one question that I want to address, which is the court said to you, well, what's interesting to me, to be quite honest, is that yesterday you didn't even want to do a written reply. You wanted to just give an oral response. And what you said to the court was, I never saw these. I've never seen these. And I never saw the report. I have absolutely never seen these until this morning. Do you remember saying that to the court?
With regard to the 3 Starline brass, with regard to the 3 cartridges that appear to be similar to rust, yes.
Oh my God.
Well,
I never saw them until today.
Oh my
Well,
God.
but you said also, I never saw the report, right?
I never did.
Right, but don't you think, given your duty of candor to this court, that that's awfully misleading to not tell the court at that point that you knew about this when it occurred long ago?
That I knew about what?
You knew that Mr. Teskey had turned in this evidence, that you knew that the report would have existed because you just told this court that the doc report was okayed by you.
Sure.
Don't you think it was misleading to this court to not just say at that point, just so you know, I know about this. I knew about this then. I was involved.
I did not intend to mislead the court. My understanding of what was dropped off at the sheriff's department is on this computer screen, and it looks absolutely nothing like the live rounds from the set of rust.
The truth of this matter is you don't like Mr. Baldwin very much, do you?
That is absolutely untrue.
Oh,
I
really?
actually really appreciate Mr. Baldwin's movies. I really appreciated the acting that he did on Saturday Night Live, and I really appreciate his politics.
You told one of the witnesses who disagreed with you during an interview that you thought Mr. Baldwin was a...
Oh.
I do not recall saying that. I know that that was something that Mr. Baldwin would say on the set of Rust. I don't recall saying.
Oh my God. Oh my God. People, if you are a professional working in the context of your job, you do not call anybody nasty names.
That.
Do you deny that under oath?
No.
Without having more information? I can.
Because she's going, okay, if I lie, then someone probably has me on recording calling him an arrogant asshole. Maybe I shouldn't answer that under oath. She's got legal problems coming, y'all. She is.
I can tell you that I do not recall ever saying that. And if I did say it, I invite you to point it out to me.
You called him an arrogant prick to another witness.
To who? To what witness?
It
I'm
doesn't
asking you,
matter.
did you call him an arrogant prick during a witness interview?
I don't believe I did. I don't recall.
You deny that.
Okay, listen, y'all. Let me give the example, okay? So Blonde PT is in here, right? So we're friends. So if I say to her, or if I say to Kim, that Blonde PT, she is just an arrogant ass. If somebody says later on, hey, did you say that Blonde PT was an arrogant ass? Then you might say, well, I don't know. I invite you to show me if you have proof. But if you don't have any proof, no, I didn't say it. But if they came and said, did you call calming the chaos an arrogant ass? I would immediately go, what? No. Like, what are you talking about? That's not what you get from that. You're watching her anticipate, okay, they may have recordings. I may have a backstabber in my midst. I may have put it in my email. So that's why you're seeing her play dumb. But this is not a dumb woman. This is a brilliant woman, very powerful, very confident. She's been in battle for many years, getting a paycheck from being a warrior. No, she definitely called him the dirty names. And the fact that she says, and I very much like his politics, bull, that was a lie.
Without knowing what you're talking about, all I can tell you is that I can't respond if I don't know what you're talking about.
And you said also to witnesses that you would teach him a lesson.
I never said to witnesses that I would teach him a lesson.
Wow.
Absolutely not. In fact, Mr. Spiro, I want to give a full response to your question.
Oh, now she's fighting again. Look at
I made every effort in this case to resolve this case with your client in a very favorable way for him.
All right, I'm going to move to strike this. It's not responsive.
That's right.
It is
Well, I don't
responsive.
want to talk about plea negotiations.
Yeah, and it's not responsive. So I have no further
All right,
questions.
do you have any follow-up testimony?
Good job, Spiro.
All right,
I want to say I have no recollection of calling him any of those names. I have invited the defendant
Listen,
to tell me what he's talking about, and he has declined. I want the court to take notice of that.
oh, the court is noticing
you may
plenty.
step down.
The court noticed plenty. All right. Wow. Okay, so there you have it. That is the way it all unfolded. Yeah, and everybody knows what she was trying to do. She didn't take on Alec Baldwin because she hated his politics. She didn't take on Alec Baldwin to teach him a lesson because he's an arrogant ass. The reason that she took on Alec Baldwin was because that was going to be her vehicle to fame, wasn't it? That was going to be the big fish. That's the truth. To be the one to successfully prosecute Alec Baldwin puts her name on the front page. That's that. There you go. Common Chaos agrees. He's the big fish. That's right. She thought, my ship has come in. I'll get this guy. Then I'll be able to run and do office or write a book or whatever. This is a stepping stone toward more fame or wealth. That's true. Yeah. So you got to operate from an honorable position always. And it's not always easy. People don't walk around just being angels. We're all human and we all have, baser instincts. And when you're confronted with those moments in your life where the rubber hits the road, you have to be ready to do the right thing, to take a deep breath and say, I got to do it this way. It's not what I want. It's not what's going to be best for me, but it is, in fact, the legal, ethical, or moral mandate. And she didn't do that. She just didn't do it. She did not want to see charges dropped against Alec Baldwin. She didn't want that. She wanted it to go to her big shining moment where she bags the big fish. She goes out in front of the wall of cameras. She's featured on the, news, and she gets interviews with all the big guys. That's my opinion. I think this is, well, I'm not going to play that because that's hard to hear. This is the video where the guy brings in the.
Is there a reason that we don't have volume?
It does have a pre-record that's just audio. And
he even says, I need to make a statement. And he asks 4 or 5 times to the police officers, the people there at the police station, I'm bringing this ammunition. I feel like y'all wanted me to do a statement. I feel like I need to make a statement. And he just kept getting brushed off.
30-second pre-video. And then once I activate the camera, the audio will kick on.
Okay.
Yes.
As far as I'm concerned, Lieutenant, so nice to meet you.
So this is Troy, and he's bringing
Do you
the
need
stuff.
me to stop here? Or because I should probably write out something to go with this.
Like a chain of custody.
statement.
Well, we would have a chain of custody there. So, yeah, come with me and we'll go.
So they even talk about chain of custody. If we listen to this whole video, you'll hear Troy saying, I feel like, I need to make a statement. I'm happy to make a statement. I will make a statement. They were aware. This cop right here, they recognized that this needed to be handled properly. And yet the very minute the lead investigator and the prosecutor get this, that's when it all went off the rails. Horrible. Absolutely horrible. All right. I'm not going to play that whole thing because I think I've probably already run my hour. Ooh, we're at an hour and a half. Okay. So, no, I exactly, Kim. It was very curious. She certainly got her 15 minutes of fame. I think she's going to get more than that too, DB, because I think that there will be sanctions against this prosecutor. I think it is going to, and it could be worse, we'll see if she's disbarred. We'll see if Alec Baldwin tries to sue the city or the state. This is crazy, really. And I don't know at what point, I don't know where it goes, from there, but we'll see. Captain Jack tossed her off the ship. You guys have such a great day. It's Saturday. I'm going to get out in the sun and get some fresh air and do some stuff. And y'all have a wonderful day. All right. And feel free to share the video if you wish. And I'll be back another day. Talk to you later. Bye.